first time for me to do this PPT thing. So the title of today's talk may sound a little lofty. The moment of resolve, commanding the nature through choice and action. But it's really about something very close to our everyday lives, the choices we make and the courage to follow through with them. So commanding the nature is the title of chapter 12 in our One Buddhist scripture. It contains 16 short teachings, and today I will focus on just two of them, the 13th and the 14th. But before we get there, let's pause and ask, what does it mean to command the nature? Commanding the nature, it's the translation from Korean word solsong, and it's Chinese character. So sol means to lead, command, and song means the nature, innate character, or inborn quality. And this phrase, solsong, has its roots in Confucianism. In the Doctrine of the Mean, one of the classic Confucian texts, it says, the first line, it means what heaven has conferred is called the nature. The second line, to accord with this nature is called the way. The last line means cultivating the way is called education. So the character soul basically means to lead or to command, but in classical texts, depending on the context, it can also mean to follow. Why follow? Because to lead implies not only taking the lead, but also that others are led. So the idea of to follow naturally arises. That's why it can be translated in two directions, actively as to lead or command, or passively as to follow. In One Buddhism, the translating committee chose a stronger word, command. Why not just follow? I think it's because they wanted to highlight something essential in One Buddhist teaching, our own agency, our willpower, and our ability to choose. And Venerable Cheongsan, our second Dharma master, gave a vivid metaphor of this, what it means to command the nature. So let me read a quote. Think of the mind like a horse. Our discriminating mind, the part of us that is always judging, comparing, and reacting, is like the horse itself. But our original nature, which is calm and clear, is like the horse trainer. If the horse suddenly tries to run into the grain field, the trainer has to hold the reins and guide it back. In the same way, our original nature needs to take the lead and guide the restless, wandering mind. Our true nature is neither good nor bad. It's more like a spacious, empty field. It depends on how we cultivate it and what choices we draw from it. So follow might sound easier, but it can also suggest passively going along. And command reminds us that we have responsibility, the power to guide our own mind and direct our own life. This is why our founding master Sotaesan gave us these 16 items for commanding the nature. Now let's look at the two of them. So they say, even at the risk of your life, do what is right, no matter how much you may dislike doing it. Even at the risk of your life, do not do what is wrong, no matter how much you may want to do it. So obvious, right? So whenever I read these lines, I felt a bit of pressure from the phrase, even at the risk of your life. How does it sound to you? No, honestly, for a long time, I found it heavy and even intimidating. But Venerable Jeongsan, our second head Dharma master, explained it in a very practical way. He said, for ordinary people with weak willpower, it's not easy to carry something through to the end, even if they know it is the right thing to do. But if you give up halfway, you never accomplish anything. That is why, for what is truly right, we need the kind of resolve that feels as serious as risking our lives. This is the example that Master Jeongsan himself gave. He said, think about how we begin a spiritual practice. At first, when we take up meditation or chanting, we start with enthusiasm. For the first day or two, we feel diligent and committed. But then, excuses begin to creep in. I'm too tired today. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm so busy. I'm practicing tomorrow instead. And one excuse leads to another, and before we know, our practice starts to slip away. And it's really no difference from exercise, right? Maybe you promise yourself you'll go to the gym maybe 3 times a week, or you've started jogging in the morning. Excuse me. And at the beginning, you're motivated and you even buy new shoes. But after a week, the excuse starts. It's raining today, and I have a meeting today. I skipped just this once. Soon the habit weakens, and it gets harder and harder to start again. So what Mr. Jeongsan is telling us is that our habitual tendencies, like laziness, distraction, or avoidance, are strong. They don't disappear on their own. To overcome them, we need a certain mindset, a firm inner voice that says, no matter what, I will not give in. Without that resolve, we fall back into old patterns. And this isn't just about meditation or exercise. Deep down, we already know many things that are right. We know kindness is better than harshness, that generosity brings more peace than selfishness. We know holding on to resentment only hurts us. But knowing isn't the same as doing. Living it out day after day is not easy. One of our previous Dharma master, Venerable Jieun, he had visited our center, One Dharma Center, once. And he said, actually, I remember he was giving a Dharma talk here, and this was a story that I heard at that time. And he said it was extremely difficult for him to correct what seemed like a small habit, walking with his feet turned outward, like this. So for him, it took tremendous effort and constant mindfulness. And just to change the way he walked required determination day after day. If even a small outward habit like that required such effort, then how much more does it take to change the deep habits of our mind and temperament? For me, to be honest, I'm not the kind of person who does everything with fiery passion and intensity. I tend to give just enough effort not to fail, but not necessarily to excel either. Take exercise, for example. I've been trying to make exercise part of my daily routine. When it comes to jogging, I don't really try to improve my speed. I actually enjoy what's called slow jogging. Have you heard about this term? Why? Because if I push myself too much and don't see the result I want, I know I get frustrated and probably give up altogether. Slow jogging feels good enough for me, and it keeps me going. My spiritual practice has been similar. For most of my life, I've leaned more toward consistency than on intensity. I thought, as long as I keep at it, that's pretty enough. I will get there someday anyway. But one day, something happened that made me realize I may need to change this attitude. That day, I lived almost the whole day pretty mindfully, with focused mind in each and every work. My mind stayed steady from morning until evening. But toward the end of the day, I faced a situation that gives me a sort of stress. Maybe it touched an old wound, a place of fear and tension that has always been difficult for me. On the surface, it wasn't a big deal at all. From the outside, nothing serious had happened. But when I returned to my room that evening, I suddenly felt the urge to escape. So what did I do? I clicked YouTube and began watching video after video. It felt as though if I turned off the screen, I would have to face the stress directly. So instead, I distracted myself until I got too tired, and eventually I went to bed. And that night, I had a dream. In the dream, I had done something terrible, something that deeply hurt people around me. They saw it and looked at me with such disappointment. In the dream, I wept bitterly. My heart was crushed because I had hurt the people that I love. Then I woke up. It was 2:00 in the morning. The feeling from the dream was still vivid, almost painfully real. As I lay there in the middle of the night, my heart was still racing, and the sorrow felt so strong. I asked myself, why did I dream this? What does it mean? Was it just a random? The event in the dream was absurd, something that would never actually happen in my real life. But the feeling of regret was so strong that I began to wonder if there was any message from it. Then suddenly, it hit me like a shock. The mistake I made in the dream, crossing a line in a moment of impulse, thinking to myself, maybe just this once is okay. Maybe nobody will notice. It was exactly the same state of mind I had just a few hours earlier when I escaped into YouTube instead of facing my stress. The details were different, but the inner attitude was the same. It was that subtle moment of knowing something isn't right, but letting myself go along with it anyway. And in that moment of realization, I thought, if I keep allowing this habit of running away from stress, of ignoring what I know is right, someday I will face real regret, not just in a dream, but in my actual life. That night, lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, I made a quiet but firm resolution. I will not keep running away. I will face my fears. I will face my stress, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it feels painful. I will not escape. This happened in a very short moment, actually. But it felt like a turning point. Of course, I know I'm not the only one. We all have our own ways of avoiding what's uncomfortable, don't we? Some of us reach for food or alcohol, and some of us reach for our phones, scrolling endlessly through social media, news, and online shopping. Others binge watch shows late into the night, telling ourselves just one more episode. For a moment, it feels like the stress is gone, but it's a temporary thing. But deep down, we know, it hasn't really gone anywhere. It's just been pushed down. The problem is when we repeat these small escapes over and over, they add up. Little by little, they darken our mind. So over time, what began as a small avoidance can grow into a heavier burden, sometimes even into anxiety or depression. And eventually, the moment comes when we can't avoid the result any longer. That's why these verses are so powerful. They remind us, even if I really don't want to do it, I will do what is right. Even if I desperately want to do it, I will not do what is wrong. It's not about going to a battlefield or literally risking our lives. It's about facing those everyday battles inside, the fear, the stress, the temptations, and choosing differently, even when it's hard. Of course, we all know that one resolution doesn't instantly change everything. Old habits don't disappear overnight. But having that moment of resolve is still so important because it means we've touched the place inside ourselves where change is possible. So instead of running away from fear, from discomfort, or from procrastination, let's turn and face them. Let's actually try And if it's something we know we should not be doing, let's have the courage to stop. Sometimes the best thing we can do is simply to do it first, even before we feel like it. If it's something you've already decided to do, something you know you're supposed to do, don't wait until you feel inspired or motivated. I used to do that. Just do it and keep that promise to yourself. Because once we take action, our brain, our emotions, and even our energy, they catch up later. And it doesn't have to be big. Start small. Find a way to start it with something that feels comfortable or even easy. What matters isn't how big or dramatic the step is. It's that we take it. Think about it like this. You don't have to clean the whole house today. Just organize just one drawer that is messy. You don't have to solve every relationship problem. Just send one kind message or say one word of gratitude. You don't have to meditate for an hour. Just sit quietly for 5 minutes. Each small action itself already set changes in motion. Each of us has our own challenges. What feels very difficult for me may be easy for you, and what feels almost impossible for you may seem simple to someone else. But no matter who we are, every one of us has a particular edge we need to face in order to grow. So I invite you to reflect. What is that one area of your life that always feels vague and uncomfortable or difficult? It might be a habit you've struggled with for years or a fear you've kept avoiding. Now, instead of waiting for the perfect moment or trying to change everything at once, think of one small and simple step you can take. Just one. It could be as small as pausing for a mindful breath when stress arises, or spending just 5 quiet minutes before reaching for your phone, or finally taking that short walk you've been putting off. Change doesn't begin with something dramatic. It begins with something doable. And when we take that first small step, we prove to ourselves that transformation is possible. And here's something wonderful part. If we choose what is right, not only does it lead to good results, it feels good. We feel proud when you've done something consistent with our values. We feel a sense of self-efficacy when we've acted to take on a situation that was challenging instead of avoiding it. So let's not think of this path as grim or heavy. It's not forcing ourselves to suffer. As Venerable Jeongsan said, when we encounter something truly right, we shouldn't drag ourselves to it as if it were a burden. Instead, we should bring forth a heart of joy and passion and throw ourselves into it wholeheartedly, whether it's our study, our practice, or our daily work. That, he said, is what it truly means to command the nature. The very act of doing what is right can bring its own joy and excitement. So once we taste that joy, it reinforces itself. It makes us want to continue. Sote-san reminded us there is such a thing as suffering that will eventually turn into happiness. Suffering that will eventually turn into happiness. Not all suffering does, but when it comes from choosing the right path, even hardship eventually turn into joy. My hope is that we find the courage to set a firm resolution to look straight as the most stubborn, sneaky habits within us. These are the habits that quietly slip in almost unnoticed, yet end up bringing suffering to ourselves and to those we love. If we can face even one of those habits with sincerity and determination, little by little, transformation becomes possible. And as we do, we discover that this path is not only about struggle, it is also about joy. So may we walk this path together with determination, with sincerity, and with joy. And may each small step we take today open the way to deep transformation. Thank you for listening.